Sweet enough without all that sugar. This information is brought to you by the Green River Area Family and Consumer Sciences Extension Agents. The objectives of this information is for participants to learn what carbohydrates are and what purpose they serve in the body. You will also learn about nutritive and non-nutritive sweeteners, the many forms of added sugar, and the recommendations for health. Participants will learn methods for reducing sugar intake while purchasing and preparing foods, and participants will also develop personal goals to improve health. According to the Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2015 to 2020, about half of all American adults, about 117 million individuals, have one or more preventable chronic diseases, many of which are related to poor quality eating patterns and physical inactivity. These include cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and poor bone health. More than 2/3 of adults and nearly 1/3 of children and youth are overweight or obese. These high rates of being overweight and obese and chronic disease have persisted for more than 2 decades and come not only with increased health risk, but also at high cost. In 2008, the medical costs associated with obesity were estimated to be $147 billion. In 2012, the total estimated cost of diagnosed diabetes was $245 billion, including $176 billion in direct medical cost and $69 billion in decreased productivity. We're going to start with the earliest sweet foods in humans and their sweets. The earliest sweet foods included fruits and honey. Humans crave sweet foods, even from very small ages, because sugar is critical for providing quick energy for our bodies. So we'll go over sugar, the nutritive sweeteners, non-nutritive sweeteners, and added sugars. Nutritive sweeteners are naturally found sweeteners. They provide calories in the diet and lack nutrients essential for growth, development, and health. Examples include cane sugar, corn syrup, and fructose. Non-nutritive sweeteners provide sweetness and taste, but are zero or low-calorie sweeteners. These can be artificially made, like sucralose and aspartame, or found in plants, like stevia and monk fruit. Added sugars are added to foods prepared at home or by food manufacturers during processing. Examples include the sugar you add to homemade jams and jellies, or added sugar found in cereals, breads, and condiments at the grocery store. As you pay more attention to the food you are eating and what you are putting on your plate, you may find yourself more aware of whether you are full or not. Carbohydrates are one of the major macronutrients our bodies need to work properly. Sugar is a type of carbohydrate that is the preferred energy source for our body. It provides quick energy because it is the easiest for our bodies to break down and use. Many foods high in sugar are low in other nutrients. Instead, we should choose foods that are nutrient dense. These types of foods are typically low in added sugar. Remember, not all carbohydrates are bad. We just need to be careful not to consume too much of them. So let's remember that 1 teaspoon of sugar equals about 4 grams of carbohydrates and 16 calories. 3 teaspoons, or 1 tablespoon, equals 12 grams and 48 calories. 16 tablespoons, or 1 cup, equals 192 grams of carbohydrates and 768 calories. Added sugar. There are more than 60 names for added sugar on food labels. Low-fat foods typically are higher in added sugar to help preserve taste. Many foods we think of as healthy have hidden added sugar such as yogurt, energy bars, pasta sauces, breads, and salad dressings. Here is a table of some common names for nutritive sweeteners. And several of them are granulated sugar, cane sugar, and then you have sucrose, fructose, molasses, honey, agave nectar, glucose, and several others. You can look at that list and see the many common names for nutritive sweeteners. Here are some common names for non-nutritive sweeteners, like sorbitol, aspartame, sucralose, stevia, and others. This chart shows the kind of sweetener and the calories per teaspoon. Example, honey has 21 calories per teaspoon, and then granulated sugar only has 16 calories per teaspoon. Many people think honey and other sweeteners are healthier than table sugar. That is not the case. It is still a sweetener that provides calories, and many of these provide more calories per teaspoon than table sugar. So lacking nutrients such as vitamins and minerals essential for health are empty calories. So now let's talk about how much sugar you really need.
How much do we really need? Consume less than 10% of calories per day from added sugar. The added sugar recommendation is a target based on food pattern modeling and national data on intakes of calories from added sugar. This target demonstrates the public health need to limit calories from added sugar to meet food groups and nutrient needs within calorie limits. When added sugars exceed 10% of calories, a healthy eating pattern may be difficult to achieve. With these recommendations, Americans of all ages, which include children, adolescents, adults, and older adults, should meet the physical activity guidelines for Americans to help promote health and reduce the risk of chronic disease. And Americans should aim to achieve and maintain a healthy body weight. So, following the USDA dietary guidelines, no more than 10% of daily calories should be from added sugar. So an example of this would be 200 calories of a 2,000 calorie diet, which comes out to about 12 teaspoons. The average American adult consumes 22 teaspoons of added sugar each day. So the 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans state that follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. All food and beverage choices matter. Choose a healthy eating pattern at an appropriate calorie level to help achieve and maintain a healthy body weight. Support nutrient adequacy and reduce the risk of chronic disease. Number 2, follow on variety, nutrient dense, and amount. To meet nutrient needs within calorie limits, choose a variety of nutrient-dense foods across and within all food groups in the recommended amounts. And number 3 is limit calories from added sugar and saturated fats and reduce sodium intake. Adopt an eating pattern low in added sugar, saturated fats, and sodium. Cut back on foods and beverages higher in these components to amounts that fit within healthy eating patterns. We all know that society has a role to play in supporting healthy choices, so making sure that you choose the healthy choice. Current eating patterns in the United States. What we saw in 2010 dietary guidelines continues today. The typical eating pattern currently consumed by many in the U.S. does not align with the dietary guidelines. In this graph, the figure provides a snapshot of current intake compared to recommendations for the food groups and oils, calories from added sugars and saturated fats, and sodium. The center line is the goal or limit. The bar represents the percent of the U.S. population ages 1 year and older who are below, at, or above each dietary goal or limit. In short, the orange bars represent the percentage of Americans who are not meeting the recommendations and shows area with room for improvement. When compared to the healthy U.S. style pattern, about 3/4 of the population has an eating pattern that is low in vegetables, fruit, dairy, and oils. More than half of the population is meeting or exceeding total grain and total protein foods recommendations. But, as discussed later in this, we are not meeting the recommendations for the subgroups within each of these food groups. Most Americans exceed the recommendations of added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. In addition, the eating patterns of many are too high in calories. Calorie intake over time, in comparison to calorie needs, is best evaluated by measuring our body weight status. The high percentage of population that is overweight or obese suggests that many of the U.S. overconsumes calories. Food sources of added sugars. So in this figure, it identifies the food calories that are sources of added sugars for the U.S. population. It shows that the major sources of added sugar in typical U.S. diets is beverages, which include soft drinks, fruit drinks, sweetened coffees and teas, energy drinks, alcoholic beverages, and flavored waters. Beverages account for almost half, 47% of all added sugars consumed by the U.S. population. In other major sources of added sugars is snacks and sweets, which includes grain-based desserts such as cakes, pies, cookies, brownies, donuts, sweet rolls, and pastries. Dairy desserts such as ice cream and other frozen desserts, and puddings, candies, sugars, jams, syrups, and sweet toppings. Together, these food categories make up more than 75% of intake of all added sugars. Let's sample. Have you ever noticed how taking the first bite of food will bring a very enjoyable burst of flavor? By the third or fourth bite, the flavor sensation decreases. So we're going to look at table grapes. So we're going to try it now. Take a grape and put it in your mouth. Close your eyes, but don't chew it. Try not to pay attention to anything else. Just focus on the grape in your mouth. Then roll the grape around with your tongue. Do you notice anything that comes to mind about the taste, the texture, temperature, and sensation going through your mouth? Now, take the first bite. Notice the juicy burst as your teeth sinks in. Try to feel the sensation of what that bite is like. The flavor, the color, the texture, and the smell of the grape. Roll it around in your mouth a second time, experiencing the new flavor and texture. Now, begin chewing the grape slowly, carefully considering the new flavors and textures each time. Try to chew the grape at least 12 times, each time experiencing the flavors and changes in texture. Also, pay close attention to what chewing the grape feels like. If you feel you are paying too much attention to your thoughts, just let them go for a while and refocus on the movement of your jaw. At this point, you may want to swallow the grape. Try to pay attention to the subtle transition between chewing and swallowing. As you swallow the grape, try to follow its movement towards the back of your tongue and into your throat. Swallow the grape. Follow it until you no longer feel any sensation of food remaining. And then take a deep breath and exhale. Sugar's role in health.
Sugar's role in your health. Sugar is necessary to provide energy to our bodies. Some of our organs prefer sugar over other energy sources, but too much can be a bad thing. Diets high in sugar have negative effects on health. Diets high in sugar have negative effects on health, and consuming large amounts of sugar does contribute to weight gain and obesity, which are some of the strongest risk factors for type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Consuming large amounts of sugar does not directly cause diabetes. Also, consuming large amounts of sugar can lead to tooth decay and cavities. Additional information. So if you look, we have provided you all with some information from Sugar Institute, and it's a booklet, as you can see pictured on the slide, How Well Do You Know Sugar? And also a two-sided leaflet that talks about sugars and sweeteners and what you can find in your food. Reducing added sugars in your diet. You can take control of the amount of added sugar in your diet by making small dietary changes. This can be done when preparing foods at home, while cooking or baking, or when purchasing foods at the store or a restaurant. So some examples could be choosing whole fresh fruits or fruits canned in their own juices, or water in place of fruits canned in heavy syrup or fruit juices. When you need a sweet treat, you can look and choose fruit, either fresh, frozen, dried, or canned, but make sure it's 100% fruit juice when you're looking at selecting those fruit juices and look in the label to find that. Watch your portion sizes. Eating too much of even healthy foods can lead to weight gain and poor management for your blood sugar. Some more tips on reducing added sugar in your diet. Slowly add unsweetened or non-sugar added versions of fruit sauces. So an example would be applesauce and yogurt into your diet. Choose beverages with less added sugar when possible, such as water, low-fat milk, diet soda, and unsweetened tea or coffee. Ask to see nutrition information and choose options that are lower in sugar when you're dining out. Some tips on reducing added sugar when you're cooking or baking. You can use a half a cup of sugar per cup of flour in cakes. You can also add cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, or almond extract to give the impression of sweetness. Some other tips to help reduce added sugar when cooking and baking is replacing sugar with equal amounts of sucralose, and it works well with most baked products. And you can also use aspartame or saccharin or others only when you're wanting to have things that are not baked. So that's the difference. And then you can reduce the amount of sugar in most non-baked recipes by 25% without much change to the flavor of your product by using these substitutions. So now we're going to talk a little bit about reducing added sugar when you're shopping. So knowing how to read the nutrition facts panel or label is a great place to start when the goal is to reduce added sugars. And so we have provided you with a way to practice that in your groups. There's a extra sheet that we're giving you that's called Finding Sugar on the Nutrition Facts Panel. So you can bring one of a food label or a few food labels to your group and practice this by using this sheet that we provided. And the grams and percentage daily value of added sugars will be required on the label starting in 2020. Some food manufacturers have already began listing the added sugars on the food label. Some other tips on reducing added sugar when you're food shopping is to try to choose foods that do not have a sweetener listed in the first 3 ingredients. Limit trips down the grocery aisles that are stocked with cookies, cakes, and easy to grab snacks. And then the thing that may be the hardest is to resist candies, snacks, and sugar sweetened beverages in the checkout lane. So try to avoid those last minute grabs before you check out in the lane. So we talked a little bit and mentioned that the food label will be changing. So the FDA is require grams and percentage daily value of added sugars to be on the labels now. And so the reason that this has been done is it's difficult to meet nutrient needs and calorie limits if consuming more than 10% of calories from added sugar. So by adding this added sugar on the food label, we can be more mindful of the choices that we're making. And then so here's an example of what the old and the new food label look like. And so you can see that the total sugars on this product is 12 grams, and then below that is the included 10 grams, and it shows it's added sugars, which is 20%. So if you remember, it's suggested 10% of your daily value. So this actual product is over. So as mentioned before, there are activities for your club to do that we're providing for you, and if you don't have enough, feel free to ask your local extension office to make some more copies for you and your group. And there's 3 different handouts. There's the Finding Sugar on the Nutrition Facts label, which we talked about doing that in your club. And then examining food choices and setting realistic goals. So this would be an individual thing that you can start setting goals to be healthier and use less sugar, and look at food labels and make sure that you're using less added sugar. And also there is a hidden sugar word search. So that's another great resource that you can pass out to your club members as well. So that is the end of our presentation. Please take some time to complete the evaluation that we have provided with you today and return those to your local extension office.